He announced to the world that Muammar Gaddafi has been killed on the hands of the revolutionaries.
وطويت إلى غير رجعة صفحة القذافي ونظامه واستبداده عن ليبيا وعن وجه الأرض.
And Gaddafi's tyranny and dictatorship has been finally ended, and this chapter has been closed for Libya and for all the world.
A golden gun, said to be Gaddafi's, is shown as a trophy of victory, as Western leaders also share in the relief that it's now all over.
People in Libya today have an even greater chance after this news of building themselves a strong and democratic future. I'm proud of the role that Britain has played in helping them to bring that about, and I pay tribute to the bravery of the Libyans who've helped to liberate their country.
As the celebrations spread, so did a deep-seated sense of a new freedom.
I say congratulations to Libya, to the Arab and Islamic world. Congratulations to the whole world.
With this news, we have brought about a great achievement, freeing every inch of our country. We all now face the challenge of building new Libya.
As Gaddafi's loyal fighters in Sirte are rounded up, Libya's new leaders are calling for both justice and reconciliation. Humphrey Hawksley, BBC News.
Well, our correspondent Gabriel Gatehouse is in Sirte, where Colonel Gaddafi was discovered, and he's been to the spot where fighters say the events happened. He spoke to my colleague Michelle Hussein about it earlier.
I'm standing right by the spot where the fighters say they captured Colonel Gaddafi. It's a drainage pipe just large enough to hold a sizable man going under one of the main roads that encircles the outskirts of his hometown of Sirte. This has become the immediate focus of wild jubilation from National Transitional Council fighters flocking here to have their pictures taken on mobile phones, brandishing what they say is Colonel Gaddafi's golden pistol, and even arguing over who was the person who captured him. I saw one man with very blood-stained clothes saying that he was the person. That immediately sparked off arguments amongst the others, saying no, they were involved too. I've also seen mobile phone footage from another man who says he was there involved in the capture. It did indeed look very much like Colonel Gaddafi being attacked by a frenzied mob as he lay on the floor just where I'm standing now.
Did you get the sense from those you were talking to that they thought that they might find Colonel Gaddafi there in Sirte?
I'm getting the sense from almost everyone here of huge surprise. I think while it was a possibility, of course, that he was in his hometown because he had that support here, I think most people actually thought he was much further afield, possibly in the south of the country, or even outside of Libya altogether in another African country. So I think there is a certain sense of surprise here. On the other hand, just to the right of where I'm standing, there is evidence of a huge battle. There's about 24 cars, vehicles with guns mounted on the back that have clearly been hit by something very, very big. Now, the fighters who say they witnessed it say it was a NATO airstrike. There's also the charred remains of at least a dozen men lying around at this battle scene. Now, if it's true that this was a NATO airstrike, then that would suggest some sort of intelligence and communication between the rebels and NATO, suggesting that they were tipped off about this possible convoy of Colonel Gaddafi's trying to escape from Sirte, from the part of town where they had been surrounded.
Gabriel Gatehouse speaking to us a little bit earlier. Just a couple of lines coming in from European leaders on this news. President Sarkozy of France has said the death of Gaddafi turns a new page for the Libyan people, the start of a process to establish democracy. Sarkozy, of course, at the forefront of that mission by NATO to enter Libya, or to send help for the humanitarian cause. And Chancellor Merkel, Angela Merkel of Germany, has said that Gaddafi's death means the path is clear for a new and peaceful start for Libya. So very much singing from the same hymn sheet there, the European leaders looking towards what this will mean in a political sense for a new Libya. Well, let's talk now to Benjamin Barber. He served as an advisor on Libya to former President Bill Clinton and has personally met Colonel Gaddafi several times. He resigned from the board of Saif Gaddafi's charitable foundation when fighting began in Libya earlier this year and is the author of Jihad versus Muck World. Benjamin Barber, thanks very much for joining us on BBC News. Just to the practicalities, if you like, first of all, there had been so many contradictory reports of where Gaddafi would be in hiding. Were you surprised to hear that he was still in Libya?
I wasn't, because I don't think you would have had the vigorous and robust fighting and resistance in Sirte unless he was there. The soldiers, his backers, would not have stayed. They would have, as they did in other places, left when the going got tough. So I was convinced, because of the insistence and the urgency and the heavy fighting that went on in Sirte and the heavy defense, that he was probably there, as it turns out.
You met him several times. Would you say that he was somebody who would never have left his home country? Or do you think if he had had the security backing you talk about, he would have done quite happily?
I'm not sure he would have. He was the last of the revolutionary founders of the 1950s and 60s, like Castro and Nasser. He wasn't a Mubarak, he wasn't a soldier who came in later as a figurehead. He saw himself as a revolutionary founder, even though he became a revolutionary dictator and tyrant for 42 years. But I think, as he said in January and February and March during the onset of the insurgency, he said, "I will live and die in Libya," and now his prophecy about himself has come true.
And the extraordinary thing is that Libya has not looked to a new regime or a new government since 1969. I mean, all the world leaders now are talking about the peaceful path to democracy. How easy, how straightforward do you think that will be?
Well, you know, ironically, on Sunday, Hillary Clinton, Secretary Clinton, was in Tripoli, and it's ironic because for many years, Muammar Gaddafi had been trying to get, during the peaceful period, the Clintons to visit there, and she finally did visit the day before he was killed. But she gave what I think is really his epitaph, and that is, "Now comes the hard part." Because revolution is costly and it takes brave men and women, and the Libyans have been immensely brave and paid tremendous cost to liberate their country. But in a certain sense, it's easy. You overthrow the regime, you overthrow the dictator. That can be done in a day, in a month, in a few months. But to establish democracy takes years, even generations. And the hard work of establishing democracy in a country divided by tribes, by clans, by East and West, by some who are secular and some who are fundamentalists, means there's a very hard road before them. The Libyans have every right now to spend some days celebrating and being glad, and the victims of Lockerbie have a right to say, "Thank God, it's over, vengeance is ours." But at a certain point, the moment will come when the hard work of building democracy bottom up starts, and that's very different than the work of overthrowing a dictator.
Sure, and we'll explore what that means over the coming hour.